Shukrani sana studio zetu za ZBC hapa Mnazi Mmoja. Mtazamaji, karibu katika mkutano wa 26 hapa Golden Tulip. Ni mkutano wa utafiti na sera ambapo Wizara ya Biashara, Viwanda imeandaa pamoja na Arapoa ambao wakishirikiana kwa pamoja kwa ajili ya kongamano hili la siku mbili. Tutaendelea kuwajuza kile ambacho kinaendelea kwenye kikao hiki na tumsikilize msema chochote.
Ali Maulid, Honorable Government Senior Executives, Ministers, Principal Secretaries, and other officials. Honorable Mette Norgard Distinguished Ambassador of Denmark to Tanzania, members of diplomatic corps serving in Tanzania, workshop partners, invited guests, media personnel, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. The following is the schedule of our event, the 26th Annual Research Workshop Program, Adapting Trade to Climate Change for Competitive Green Growth in Tanzania. Soon after the schedule is read out, I will invite the religious leaders to pray for us, and the event beginning with Sheikh Hussein to be followed by Reverend Stanley Nicholas Lichinga. Immediately after the prayers, Mr. Amur Hamil Bakari, the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development, will give the welcoming remarks. To be followed by Dr. Donald Murray, the Executive Director of Research on Poverty Alleviation, REPOA, who will give his brief remarks. Then it will be the turn of Mr. Abdulmajid Sekela, the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of CRDB Bank Limited, who will give out the remarks from workshop partners. After Mr. Abdulmajid Sekela delivering his remarks, it will be the turn of His Excellency Mette Norgard Distinguished, the Ambassador of Tanzania, the Ambassador of Denmark to Tanzania, who will present the remarks from REPOA's co-partners. Thereafter, His Excellency Manfredo Fanti, the Ambassador of the European Union, will give out his remarks from the European Union. Then it will be the turn of Mr. Amur Hamil Bakari, the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development, who will welcome Honorable Omar Said Shaban, the Minister of Trade and Industrial Development, who will then welcome His Excellency Dr. Hussein Mwinyi, the President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, to perform the opening address and officially launch the workshop. After His Excellency's opening address, Mr. Jean-Paul Adam, Director of Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resources Management Division of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, will deliver the keynote presentation, while Ms. Rehema Tukai, the Vice Chair of REPOA, will give vote of thanks. The next event will be photo session. To begin the auspicious occasion, may I invite Sheikh Hussein to pray for us. Welcome, Sheikh Idi.
Mtazamaji wa ZBC, baada ya ratiba hiyo kutolewa, sasa Sheikh Idi na kuja kwa ajili ya usomaji wa dua katika warsha hii yenye lengo la kufanyika.
Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Mwenyezi Mungu, tutunikie aina zote za imani, usizidishie kipato cha fedha na thamani, utupe busara njema kwa ndugu, jamaa na majirani, utuepushe na shari na husda za watu wa mtaani, utukinge na mabaya wa viumbe, majini na mashetani. Mola mlezi, tusamehe madhambi yetu ya sasa na zamani, utulinde na maadui wote wa nje na ndani. Ya Rabbi, umlinde na muhifadhi rais wetu Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, na muepushe na shari za maadui wa siri na dhahiri, wa karibu na wa mbali, kwa baraka zako na rehema zako. Mola wetu, ifungue nchi yetu kiuchumi na itie baraka na rutba miradi yote ya kimaendeleo inayoendeshwa na serikali yetu ya mapinduzi ya Zanzibar. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Naam, mtazamaji, hii ilikuwa ni dua ambayo yenye lengo la kuanzishwa na kwa shughuli nzima hii ya leo, ambapo lengo la kufanyika kwa warsha hii ni kuweza kuifungua Tanzania kifursa yenye minyororo yenye thamani ya kimataifa kwenye masuala mbalimbali ya kiuchumi.
It's my honor to invite the Reverend Stanley Nicholas Lichinga for a prayer. You're welcome. A round of applause as he's coming to the podium.
Let us pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, glory be to you, O Lord. We ask your blessing as we start our workshop today and finishing tomorrow. We thank you for your loving us, giving us responsibility to human being to look after this world and all creatures. Give us your grace so we can do your willing. Forgive us whatever we have done wrong through Jesus Christ. Lord, bless this world. Bless Africa. Lord, bless Tanzania, bless Zanzibar, and bless us all. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Naam, mtazamaji, hayo pia ilikuwa ni maombi kutoka dini ya Kikristo ambayo imeombwa kwa ajili hii tu ya kuliombea taifa na shughuli ambazo zinaendelea.
Principal Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development of Zanzibar, for the welcoming remark. You're welcome.
Your Excellencies, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, President of Zanzibar and Chairman of Revolution Council, Honorable Modric Ramadhan Soraga, Minister of President Office, Labor, Economy and Investment, on behalf of Minister of Trade and Industrial Development, Honorable Zubair Al-Maulid, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Ministers from the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar present at this workshop, Honorable Engineer Zain Ahmed Said, Secretary of Revolutionary Council and Chief Secretary, Honorable Idrissa Kitwana Mustafa, Regional Commissioner, Urban West Region, Attorney General of the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar, Dr. Mwinyi, Honorable Member of Parliament and House of Representatives present, Honorable Dizing Spardent, Denmark Ambassador to Tanzania, Honorable Fanti, Head of European Union Delegation, Honorable Ambassador and Head of Missions and International Organization present, Honorable District Commissioners present in this workshop, Principal Secretaries, Head of Special Departments, Madam Rehema Tukai, Vice Chairman of the Board of RIPOA, Dr. Mari, Executive Director of RIPOA, Kaka Abdul Majid Nsekela, Managing Director of CRD Bank, Honorable Adam, the Director of Technology, Climate Change and the Natural Resource Management Divisions. He will be also a keynote speakers for this workshop. Distinguished speakers, panelists, and invited participants, media representative, ladies and gentlemen, protocol is observed. Nawasalimia kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. First, I'm thankful to Almighty God for enabling us to meet here at the Golden Tulip today for this important gathering of policymakers, development partners, researchers, and private sectors and financial institutions to mark the 26th concurrently of RIPOA's annual research workshop, which this year being jointly organized by Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development of Zanzibar and Central and the CRDB Bank Limited. Your Excellency, please allow me to introduce that for this first time, this workshop is being held in our islands. The decision to organize this workshop here in Zanzibar is a result of requests made at 25th workshop in November last year by Honorable Omar Said Shaban, Minister of Trade and Industrial Development, who tasked RIPOA to further demonstrate its commitment to strengthen evidence-based policymaking in Zanzibar by providing a forum for the discussion and articulation of the trade and climate change-related knowledge on our islands. The Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development and RIPOA has been working on research, value addition, and capacity development on key aspects of trade policy, include agriculture and value chain, with focus on seaweed, spices, and horticulture value chain, as well as quality management to enhance the competitiveness and diversification of our products. That was our journey started in 2017. Your Excellencies, our partnership with RIPOA has directly benefited over 300 farmers, processors, marketers, and exporters of seaweed and spices. A further 45 officials involved in the various trade support institutions under the patronage of ministry are continuing to receive training on quality assurance standards, while over 15 ministry staff have received training on research, policy analysis, and report writing. This work is worth some about 300 million Tanzania shillings. We thank RIPOA and her many partners, including the embassies of Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Ireland, the European Union through TradeCom program and United Kingdom Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office for this support. Your Excellencies, the few benefits I have mentioned are one directly targeting the ministry and its close beneficiaries. Our partnership with RIPOA also has many indirect positive spillover, including the fostering of interministerial coordination and analytical capacity in implementing the development visions as articulated in your inaugural address to the 10th House of Representatives of November 2020, and your one-year inauguration speech on November 6, 2021, which explicitly outlined the roadmap to be employed by the current phase of the revolutionary government of Zanzibar for shared prosperity for all Zanzibaris. Your Excellencies, this year's workshop is also being jointly organized by another partner, CRDB Bank Limited, a leading financial service provider in Tanzania with current presence in Tanzania and Burundi in East Africa. I understand that CRDB has recently secured access to financing worth $200 million from the Green Climate Fund through Tanzania Agricultural Climate Adaptation Technology Deployed Programs. This tripartite partnership involving the Ministry, RIPOA, and CRDB Bank Limited is a template for public-private partnership key for the national development. The Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development will continue to promote such inclusive partnership in the pursuit of National Development Vision 2050 to firmly implementing the ruling party manifesto CCM, the Zanzibar Development Plan, Zanzibar Trade Policy, Zanzibar Industrial Policy, and the Zanzibar Private Sector Development Policy. Your Excellency, before concluding my remark, please allow me to thank the following for success enabling the organization of this important workshop here in Zanzibar. First, I would like to thank RIPOA and CRDB for agreeing to organize the workshop here in Zanzibar and for their continuing support of the revolutionary government of Zanzibar effort to bring development to the people of Zanzibar. Their collective effort will hugely contribute to this venture. Secondly, I would like to thank regional administration here in Urban West for allowing us to have our workshop in this region. Thirdly, I would like to thank all entities of Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar for their effort in securing the organization of this workshop here in Zanzibar. Finally, I would like to thank all staff from the Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development for their support and encouragement in fulfillment of the ministry's missions and mandates. Thank you all for your own attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amur Hamil Bakar, for a very good welcoming remarks. Another round of applause to him. And now it's my honor to invite Dr. Donald Murray, the Executive Director of RIPOA, to give his remark. You're welcome.
Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, President of Zanzibar and the Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Mudrik Ramadan Soraga, Minister of State in the President's Office, responsible for labor, economy and investments, Honorable Ministers from the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar present at this workshop, Honorable Members of Parliament in the House of Representatives present, Honorable Regional Commissioner for Urban West, our host, Engineer Zaina Said, Chief Secretary of the Government of Zanzibar, Your Excellency Mete Noga Dising, Danish Ambassador to Tanzania, Your Excellency Ambassadors, His Excellency Manfredo Fenti, Head of the European Union Delegation, Her Excellency Charlotta Ozaki Mashas of Sweden, His Excellency David Ikonka of the United Kingdom, representatives of missions and international organizations, permanent secretaries, and the other senior government officials present, heads of security organs, Mr. Abdulmajid Sekela, Managing Director of CRDB Bank, Honorable Jean Paul Adam, the Director of Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resource Management Division of UNECA, who is our keynote speaker, who is connecting directly from Egypt, where he's already organizing the next COP 27. Religious leaders, representatives from the private sector and civil society organizations, distinguished speakers, panelists, and invited participants, media representatives, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Let me begin by thanking our Almighty God for giving us the health and strength to be here today. I feel very honored to stand here this morning in Zanzibar to invite you to the 26th Annual Research Workshop, along with our partners, CRDB Bank, and the Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development. On behalf of our members, Board of Directors, staff of Rapport, we are very comforted by your presence here, Your Excellency, President of Zanzibar, for accepting this responsibility and setting aside the time from your very busy schedule. We thank you very much. Your Excellency, it is obvious, and I believe we all see the efforts being taken by your government to transform the economy and to improve the welfare of the people of Zanzibar. At the time that all countries in the world are going through difficult times due to the destructive effects of COVID-19 and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. This is not an easy task, even for developed countries, which have lost their loved ones, with industrial production and trade plummeting, rising inflation threatening household welfare, and global recession. Data from the African Development Bank shows that average growth rates for many African nations in 2020 were negative, except for the East African economies, whose growth remained positive. While the economies recovered in 2021, when travel restrictions were lifted and economic activities resumed, growth in sub-Saharan Africa is projected to slow down to 3.3% in 2022. The effects of this contraction have led to increased poverty in Africa. While the pandemic and the Russian-Ukraine war could lead to the negative impacts over several years, the impact of climate change has accelerated these consequences and is making recovery slow and very daunting. It is estimated that in 2021 alone, around 30 million people in Africa were pushed into extreme poverty, and about 22 million jobs were lost because of the pandemic. With the ongoing conflict in Europe, the instability in the Sahel, and climate-related wars, this trend is expected to continue through into 2023 and beyond. Thus, the efforts being undertaken by the governments of the United Republic of Tanzania and that of the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar deserves accolade and support by all development stakeholders. These efforts include the supply of COVID-19 vaccines to the people, investments in economic and social infrastructure, improvements in the business environment, focus the attention to diversifying the economy, and various efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Your Excellency, since the commencement of the operations in 1995, Rapport have continued to generate new knowledge in different areas of policy, contributed to policy research capacity building, and have actively promoted the use of research-based evidence in reviewing and preparing various policies and strategies. These have been possible due to the quality and integrity of our research, various efforts to disseminate findings through publications and dialogue forums, and by participating in various government-related government-led technical teams and committees to review and develop policies and strategies. We promise to continue to cooperate with the government and other development stakeholders in pursuit of our national development targets and to supporting efforts to steer the economy back to its positive and high growth path, and more importantly, towards inclusive and sustainable economic growth. REPOA is very much motivated by the government's willingness to use research findings, and this is demonstrated by your presence here today. Over the past 27 years, REPOA's capacity building initiatives have benefited thousands of Tanzanian researchers and analysts from government, high learning institutions, civil society organizations, and media. We have also supported research users in the government and civil society organizations on policy analysis and evidence-informed policy-making skills. In recent years, we have reached out to producers, processors, and exporters of various commodities, including leather, rice, horticultural products, and seaweed, aiming to enhance their understanding on how to address productivity and quality constraints across these respective value chains with the aim of enhancing market competitiveness. Your Excellency and invited participants, our research program over these 5 years have considered our national development aspirations as outlined in the National Development Vision 2025 and the Zanzibar Development Vision 2050, the third 5-year plan, and the key trends in regional and global development. The program is focused on productive sectors and their linkages to inclusive development, competitive trade and job creation, gender equality, empowerment of women and youth, and human development, good governance, accountability and citizen participation, environment and climate change, and technology and innovation. We believe that the research in these areas will continue to provide answers to some emerging challenges in the world and to inform efforts of Tanzania to build an economy that is competitive, inclusive, and sustainable, while at the same time achieving sustainable development goals by 2030. Your Excellency, this workshop is an important forum for exchanging knowledge and will provide space for policymakers to listen to the research findings and experience from other countries. Today's dialogue is guided by the theme, Adapting Trade to Climate Change for Competitive Green Growth in Tanzania. The choice of this theme was inspired by 3 factors. First, national aspirations as reflected in the respective development blueprints, whose thrust is to strengthen our economies by making them competitive. We recognize that all countries are competing for markets, capital, and raw materials for the benefits of their respective economies and for creating jobs and improving welfare of their people. It is therefore important to assess our production systems, linkages between productive sectors, and the opportunities for integration into the global economy and trade systems. Second, like for any other country, Tanzania's export trade potentials can be realized if trade is diversified and competitive. While Michael Porter's 3 dimensions of competitiveness, that is cost leadership, differentiation, and segmentation, are still relevant in today's market environment, recent evolutions in technology and innovations have created new demands for producers and exporters to remain competitive by enabling mass customizations, traceability, and lowering transaction costs. The analysis of market needs in terms of quality and standards, policy and institutional drivers of efficiency and productivity are therefore valid in today's world. Third, climate change and its impacts are likely to be a significant barrier to trade growth, economic diversification, and social progress. With dependence on exports from climate-sensitive sectors, developing countries confront relatively higher trade costs, and these costs may rise because the same countries have the least capacity to diversify the structures of their economies in response to climate change impacts. Since the Paris agreements in the 1970s, various global efforts have been undertaken in efforts to reduce global warming, including the nationally determined contributions under the UNFCCC framework. Full implementation of NDCs would create opportunities for expanding trade and investments necessary for a global green economy. However, the desired diversification into green goods and services requires access to technologies for cleaner and efficient production, making climate change financing a key subject on the link between trade, climate change, and green economy. The current inflationary pressures around the world may make the financing conditions tighter, and so more efforts and innovations to secure climate change mitigation and adaptation financing will be critical for Tanzania. Your Excellency, we believe the research and knowledge exchange are needed to identify opportunities and constraints which will serve to inform the design and implementation of green industrial policy, aiming to increase resilience, to stimulate further economic diversification, to inform sustainable framework for harnessing the blue economy, and to scale up green goods and services. Your Excellency, we believe that your opening speech will give us guidance on areas that the government would like to deepen its knowledge and efforts, so that participants and researchers gathered here can contribute to finding solutions and recommendations for appropriate policies and strategies. We are very pleased that Honorable Jean Paul Adam, the Director of Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resource Management at UNECA, based in Addis Ababa, will share his knowledge and experience as a keynote speaker. Adam has contributed to Africa's development at different capacities, including ministerial positions in the Republic of Seychelles, where he led the Ministries of Finance, Trade, the Blue Economy at different times. After the keynote presentation, there will be three discussants, which are Dr. Abud Jombe, Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Blue Economy and Fisheries, Mrs. Santina Benson, who is the CEO of CEO Roundtable, and Mr. Jocelyn Cornet from the European Union delegation. It is our hope, Your Excellency, that after your opening address, your schedule will allow you to listen to the keynote speaker. In addition to the keynote, there will be panel discussions involving experts from various sectors, including the government, private sector, research and academic community from Tanzania and from outside Tanzania. And there will be other international participants who are connecting virtually. Your Excellency and distinguished participants, the contribution of policy, research and capacity building I outlined at the beginning could not have been realized without financial resources. So please allow me to convey our sincere appreciation to various partners in the countries that have continued to support our contribution for a long time. This includes our core partners, which are the embassies of Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Ireland. We have had other program funders, including the British High Commission through its Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office and the European Union Commission. There are many local and international organizations who support various programs that I cannot mention each one by name. But I am very pleased that some of them are here and others are following us this workshop virtually. We also recognize significant cooperation we have received from the government through the various ministries and agencies from the Union Government and the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar, the Parliament of Tanzania, and the judiciary as well. Various civil society organizations and the media cooperate with us very well. I would like to thank them all. Your Excellency and distinguished participants, I am confident that the participants will actively engage, learn, and contribute to the objectives of this workshop. And may I take this opportunity to thank all of the speakers and panelists, discussants, and all the participants for setting aside your time for this workshop. I reiterate our sincere appreciation to Your Excellency, President of Zanzibar, for being here with us this morning out of your very busy schedule. I thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Donald Murray, for an excellent speech. Another round of applause, please, for Dr. Murray. And right now, it's my honor to welcome Mr. Abdul Majid Sekela, the CEO and Managing Director of CRDB Bank Limited, to offer his remarks from workshop partners. You're welcome.
Na mtazamaji, aliondoka ni mkurugenzi wa RAPOA ambao ni taasisi ya kupunguza umaskini hapa Tanzania.
Honorable leaders at the high table, member of diplomatic corps, protocol observed. Your Excellency, before I give my speech, when I was coming to the podiums, I was reading the theme of this conference. And the theme itself says, adopting trade to climate change for competitive green growth. And I had many questions whether, if it was to translate in Swahili, it would be easy to be understood by many Tanzanians. Coming from the financial sector, I thought it is necessary for me to make a translations of the theme, because I deal with Tanzanians. Some are educated, some are educated, but we sell products. So I made a translations of the theme in Swahili, which says, kukabiliana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi kibiashara ili kujenga uchumi shindani na imara wa kijani. That being the case, Your Excellency, allow me to deliver my comments in Swahili so that most of Tanzanians, they will understand what CRDB can offer and what this conference means to them. Mheshimiwa Rais, napenda nichukue fursa hii kukushukuru kwa dhati na niungane na REPOA kwa kutenga muda wako kujumuika nasi katika kongamano hili la 26. Tunafahamu kuna majukumu mengi, lakini uwepo wako wa leo unaonyesha ni jinsi gani unaupa msukumo mkubwa mabadiliko ya tabia nchi na uko tayari kuleta mabadiliko ya kweli katika nchi yetu. Mheshimiwa Rais, nichukue fursa hii kuwashukuru sana REPOA na kuwapongeza kwa dhati kwa kuandaa conference hii. Conference hii ina wataalamu mbalimbali, ina Watanzania wanataka kusikiliza, lakini itatoa mafunzo ya kweli ili kujua nini madhara ya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi na nini fursa zilizopo katika eneo hilo. Mheshimiwa Rais, mabadiliko ya tabia nchi yamekuwepo na ni topic kubwa nchini. Is one of the global debate today. Lakini vile vile ni mjadala mkubwa katika nchi yetu ya Tanzania. Na vile vile tunafahamu muda ni sasa wa kukabiliana nayo, kwa sababu tusipofanya sasa hivi tutapata changamoto zaidi hapo baadaye. Mheshimiwa Rais, kama ilivyo kwa dunia nzima, nchi yetu ya Tanzania vile vile imepata changamoto za mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. We have also faced the challenge resulting from global climate. Hadi sasa hivi tumeangalia mabadiliko ambayo yanajitokeza, changamoto za maji tumeyasikia. Haya ni matatizo mbalimbali ya tabia nchi. Athari za mabadiliko ya tabia nchi yanaathiri sekta mbalimbali kibiashara pamoja na sekta za kilimo, na hivyo ni muhimu kama wadau kujadiliana na kutafuta suluhishi la kutoa tatizo hilo. Kwa naipongeza sana REPOA kwa leo. Athari hizi za mabadiliko ya nchi zinaweza kupunguza tija, kuongeza madhara katika biashara, kusababisha usumbufu wa ugavi, lakini vile vile kukosekana mitaji kwa ajili ya shughuli za maendeleo. Mheshimiwa Rais, pamoja na kujadili mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, tumekuwa tukiongea sana kuhusu global climate. Lakini sio kwamba kila mtu anafahamu nini mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Sisi kama benki yetu ya CRDB tulipoanzisha kitengo cha green climate, watu wengi walidhani tunajikita katika kusuluhisha majanga ya mazingira, lakini ni zaidi hapo. Mheshimiwa Rais, ufadhili wa kijani unahitaji mshikamano wa pamoja. We need all partners to work together. And I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate member of diplomatic and the other supporting partners who has been able to facilitate this conference. Nawapongeza sana. Mheshimiwa Rais, United Nations mwaka 2015 iliweka malengo 17, 17 SDGs, ikiwa na malengo kwamba ikifikapo mwaka 2030 yote yawe yametimizwa. lakini imekuwa ni changamoto na bado haitaweza kutimiza malengo yote 17. Changamoto hizi zinatokana na resources mbalimbali, ikiwepo resources za fedha. Fedha zinahitajika kutimiza malengo hayo. Inakadiriwa kinahitajika kiasi kilichopungua trilioni 7 kila mwaka kuweka miundombinu inayotokana na madhara ya tabia nchi. Hiki ni kiasi kikubwa sana kupatikana na hakijaweza kutokezea. Mheshimiwa Rais, benki yetu ya CRDB tunajivunia ilipofika mwaka 2019 tulikuwa the first bank to be accredited by Green Climate kwenye middle class kwa kuweza kusimamia miradi yenye thamani ya dola milioni 250 mradi mmoja na kuendelea. Lakini pamoja na hayo, nimesema madhara ya tabia nchi ni makubwa, yanahitaji resource, na sisi kama benki tuna wajibu, au sekta ya fedha ni mmoja mdau muhimu katika uchumi huo. Hivyo basi, baada ya kupata usaili huo, benki yetu ilikuja na mradi au program maalum ambayo inaangalia upande wa chakula, kilimo chakula, food agri, ambako tuliweza kupata mradi huu mzima unagharimu dola milioni 200, lakini tunajivunia kwamba tumepata dola milioni 100 kutoka Green Climate Fund, na benki ya CRDB itaweka dola milioni 100. Lakini milioni 200 hizi inalenga kuwafikia Watanzania kwa Tanzania bara na Tanzania na visiwani moja kwa moja wasiopungua milioni 1.2. Lakini tunafahamu watakaofaidika na mradi huo, indirect beneficiaries, hawatapungua milioni 4.9. Mpaka mradi huu unaisha utawafikia Watanzania milioni 6.2. Mheshimiwa Rais, ninafarijika na naipongeza RAPOA kwa kuja na warsha hii. Imekuja kwa wakati mwafaka kwa sababu tunatarajia kuanza programu hiyo hivi karibuni baada ya kukamilisha maandalizi yote. Tutailonji hapa Zanzibar na tutailonji bara. Na ndio maana nikasema niongee Kiswahili, kwa sababu mazao ya chakula hapa Zanzibar ni muhimu, na sisi kama benki ya CRDB tutawezesha wakulima. Na uzuri wa mradi huu unakuja na mambo matatu. Moja, utapata mikopo yenye riba nafuu kwa wakulima. Lakini pili, tumetenga fedha milioni 10 ndani ya mradi huo, dola milioni 10 ambazo zinalenga kujenga uwezo wa wakulima na kuwapa nyenzo za kisasa. Tatu, tumetenga dola milioni 10 katika mradi huo zenye malengo ya kukabiliana na changamoto za tabia nchi kwa kuwakatia bima ili mazao yakipata changamoto wasipoteze mitaji yao. Na 4, tumetenga milioni 10 ndani ya mradi huo ambazo zitasaidia kuwadhamini ili wapate mikopo, kwa sababu tunafahamu ni moja ya changamoto katika eneo. Mheshimiwa Rais, pamoja na jitihada hizo, kwa kutambua hilo, tumekuwa na maongezi ya kina kwa kushirikiana na ZECO na wizara husika katika upande wa blue economy. Upande wa ZECO tumejadiliana ni jinsi gani ya kuweza kutafuta fedha kwenye mradi wa umeme jua, solar energy. Maongezi yanaendelea vizuri na tumeshaanza kufanyia kazi. Lakini kwa blue economy vile vile tunaendelea maongezi mazuri na wizara husika, na vile vile upande wa smart city. Lakini niseme vile vile kwenye upande wa miradi hii Green Climate inagusa maeneo mengi. Moja ni upande wa umeme, usafirishaji, smart city, upande wa afya, chakula, matatizo ya maji, upande wa misitu, pamoja na mambo ya teknolojia, ecosystems, lakini infrastructure. Mheshimiwa Rais, sisi kama benki kiongozi katika eneo hili tumekuwa tukisema ni wachache wanaofahamu upatikanaji wa fedha hizi. Lakini fedha hizi ziko katika maeneo naweza kaweka 4. Moja ni pale benki tunapobuni mradi kama hii program ambayo nimeitaja na kuleta fedha na kuwatafuta wateja kukopeshwa. Lakini la pili ni pale serikali inapokuwa na miradi ya kimkakati ambayo inazingatia mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, inahitaji fedha. Benki yetu kwa kuwa accredited na Green Climate, tutasaidia kutafuta fedha hizo moja kwa moja ambayo zitapatikana kwa riba nafuu. Lakini pili, panapokuwa na watu binafsi wenye kuwekeza katika miradi hiyo, basi benki yetu inafanya kazi nao na kutafutia pesa hizo, na sisi tunakuwa wasimamizi. Na la mwisho ni pale panapokuwa na PPP ambao tumefanya kazi. Mheshimiwa Rais, niliona ni vizuri niongee Kiswahili katika maeneo haya, nikijua Watanzania wengi watajua fursa ziko wapi. Maana mjadala leo utajadili mambo mengi, jinsi ya kufinance, changamoto zilizopo, lakini vile vile kusaidia kuangalia sera zipi zinatakiwa kuboreshwa zile wakati wa sasa. Na sisi kama benki kwenye mradi wetu tunacho kifungu kitachogusia maboresho ya sera katika maeneo hayo. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa kumalizia tena, nichukue fursa hii kukushukuru sana kwa kujumuika nasi, nishukuru waandaaji na nishukuru partners kwa kutuweza kutunga mkono. My call to the rest of the community is to work together to address the climate challenges. And I do believe that having this conference is not a mistake. It is actually an ideal time. In the discussions, I also call other partners, financial institutions, to join this particular engagement, and you are able to support Tanzanians. Asanteni sana, nakushukuru Mheshimiwa Rais.
Thank you very much. Asante sana, Mr. Abdul Majid Nsekela. Thank you very much. So Mr. Nsekela offered his remarks in Kiswahili. So just in brief, he shared that climate change is among the pressing challenges facing our country as well as other countries globally, and it's affecting trade and economy, and recommended that it's time to work together to address the climate change. He as well shared several initiatives that CRDB are doing or planning to do in the future to support social and economic development. Well done, and another round of applause to CRDB. Thank you very much. Just a brief announcement. From now on, all presenters, please may you use the side stairs rather than the front stairs. Thank you very much. And without further ado, now it's my honor to invite Her Excellence Mette Nogard Despondent, the Ambassador of Denmark to Tanzania, to offer the remarks from Repoa's co-partner. A round of applause to her.
Your Excellency, President Hussein Ali Mwinyi, Speaker, Honorable Ministers, colleagues, high-level officials, allow me to simply say partners, friends, ladies and gentlemen, habari za asubuhi. All protocol observed, I hope. I'm pleased and honored to give remarks at this event on behalf of development partners providing co-support to Repoa, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, and my own country, Denmark. A lot of skill and hard work has gone into making today's event possible. The impressive number of participants, including His Excellency the President, ministers, senior officials from the public and the private sector represented here today, is a clear reflection of the fact that the theme of this workshop plays an important part in enabling the potential of this magnificent country. Different generations have different challenges to address. In my grandparents' generation, the balance of payments deficit was something that worried everyone and that was heavily discussed at the dinner table. In my parents' generation, it was inflation and currency crises. In our generation, the challenges have become of an existential nature. Climate change, loss of biodiversity, environmental degradation, and the pressure on the world's resources are among the greatest global threats of our time. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, we have two paths in front of us. One where extreme weather events, rising sea levels, droughts and change of rain patterns, wildfires and heat waves become more normal. That is the path we're on now. But we do have a choice. The other path is one more green and one more sustainable future with clean energy, clean air, green jobs, better lives for all. And to travel this path, we all need to play our part, and we all need to up our game. All countries need a fair chance to provide sustainable development to their people. All countries need to take responsibility individually and to move forward together. Different countries have different responsibilities. The developed countries have committed to deliver on climate financing and are trying to lead the way in transitioning to green solutions. This should happen in parallel with a concerted effort to help build climate change resilience in the least developed countries. We as individuals, as corporations, and as nations have different economical, geographical, and historical opportunities and different circumstances for forging our part of this path. Our efforts will not be similar, nor will our challenges be of the same caliber, but our aim and our potential reward will be the same. And if we do it right, the gratitude of the coming generations will go to all those who are ready to step up now. We all know that dramatic climate change is already a fact in Tanzania, affecting livelihood and biodiversity. A recent report from Oxford Economics have highlighted that higher food prices have become a key concern in East Africa, as the entire region is struggling with dry weather conditions and is heading towards a 5th consecutive failed rainy season in the final quarter of this year. Local developments have a large bearing on the price of food in Tanzania. About 2/3 of the population is directly or indirectly engaged in agriculture and food production, which is increasingly impacted by climate change. I mention these few facts to underline that this workshop, as my good friends from CNB just said, adapting trade to climate change for competitive green growth, comes at a very important point in time. It provides us with a platform to dialogue and explore possible paths to the future we want, a green, secure, fair, and sustainable future. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the challenges of fostering sustainable development and addressing climate change are interrelated and mutually reinforcing. At the global level, our collective endeavors are guided by the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. Following the 15th Conference of the Parties in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, convened in Copenhagen, my country, 2009, developed countries committed to a collective goal of mobilizing $100 billion per year by 2020 for climate action in developing countries. As for Denmark, we aim to mobilize at least 1% of the promised $100 billion by 2023, somewhat above our weight in the international economy. And 60% of our climate aid will help the most vulnerable nations adapt to climate change. Other countries are also doing their part towards the same goal, but regrettably, we are collectively behind the target. We are relieved to see that a new analysis by OECD indicates that it's likely we reach this target of $100 million a year by 2023. As for Tanzania, I would like to commend the government for its national climate change response strategy from June 2021, taking action to protect and restore nature and ecosystems such as forests, wetlands, and ocean. The private sector should follow suit. It's time to think climate-smart solutions and climate-smart ways of doing business. As Tanzania aspires to become a private sector-driven industrial and more competitive nation by 2025, it's important to travel the path with opportunities that leads to a sustainable and green future. But for Tanzania and other countries to do this, the global community must work together in partnership. Despite the international commitment to addressing the climate challenge as evidenced by the early entry force of the Paris Agreement, there is still much to do for all of us. Achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and related frameworks, such as the Paris Agreement, will require a true spirit of partnership from all stakeholders at all levels and in all countries, leveraging their diverse and unique advantages. And within these partnerships, we need ideas and innovation to flow freely, improving our chances of reaching our common goal. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, in Swahili, there is a good saying, umoja ni nguvu. In English, unity is power. Thank you. This should underpin our efforts of working together to address our common climate change challenges. We need strong partnerships between public and private actors as defining characteristic of the road ahead. We also need closer cooperation between state actors, municipalities, universities, and other knowledge institutions to create attractive value propositions also for foreign investors. At a global level, we see collaboration between countries and through institutions like the European Union and the United Nations to forge the best alliances to increase the impact of efforts. The Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Facility enabling climate adaptation for countries most in need are important testaments to global partnership efforts, including here in Tanzania, where it's been good to see the accreditation of CRDB Bank to administer funds from the Green Climate Fund. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of fellow development partners, I would like to commend the unique partnership between RIPOA and the CRDB Bank in organizing this workshop. It creates a unique space to provoke and promote the critical dialogue needed. I further commend RIPOA, our long-standing partner, for incorporating climate change in its strategy as a cross-cutting theme with the objective of contributing to the Sustainable Development Agenda of Tanzania, including the Blue Economy Agenda. Let us continue to enable a conducive environment necessary for independent research institutions to thrive and to contribute in the development efforts of this country through their research and policy recommendations. I would also like to emphasize the role of core funding for research institutions like RIPOA to continue to build and safeguard institutional capacity, sustainability, and independence. In absence of core support, research institutions will have to rely more on collaborative research projects and commissioned work, which are earmarked and may not guarantee institutional integrity and sustainability. I therefore humbly call on all development partners, private sector and the government to support research institutions like RIPOA for them to operate in a free, open and conducive environment and play their part in contributing to the transformation agenda. It is forces like these that can help all of us choose the right path and reach our goals. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now it is time to choose our path to the future, a brighter, greener future for the generations to come. Let this 26th RIPOA Annual Research Workshop be part of forming that path, a stepping stone to get there together and in partnership. Asante sana, thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellence Mette Disinspundit, the Ambassador of Denmark to Tanzania. Another round of applause, please. Power. And right now it's my honor to invite His Excellency Manfred Fant, Ambassador of the EU to Tanzania, to offer the remarks from National Development Partners. You're welcome. A round of applause as he's going to the podium.
Your Excellency, the President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Honorable Minister Soraga, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Chief Secretary, the Dr. Donald Murray, the Chief Executive Officer of CRDB, the members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Let me try to present to you the subject that we are discussing today from the perspective of the EU-Tanzania relations in trade. Some issues are common to Tanzania's trade with all other partners, but some are more specifically concerning the trade with the European Union. In July 2021, the European Union decided to fix the objectives of cutting its greenhouse gas emissions by 55% from the 1999 levels by 2030, and to reach zero emissions by 2050. This is good because the European Union has been contributing largely to emissions and has now taken the commitment of serious mitigating actions. So it has taken its responsibilities. However, this entails new regulations imposed on the business in order to comply with environmental standards, including with regard to imported products. In parallel, developing countries like Tanzania face a double challenge. On the one hand, they suffer from the effects of climate change and, on the other hand, their products must gradually comply with the new regulations to be competitive on the European market or even simply to access it. Agriculture and food processing is central to this theme because production is affected by the consequences of climate change, such as extreme weather phenomena, but also because the standards and regulations on food products in Europe are becoming stricter. This is particularly relevant for Tanzania, where this sector is essential for the national economy. As a concrete example, the European Union has adopted the so-called farm-to-fork policy, aiming at reducing the environmental impact of agriculture and improving the quality of food. For instance, by reducing by 50% the use and risk of chemical pesticide by 2030 and reducing by 50% the use of more hazardous pesticide by 2030. But also, the policy aims at substantially increasing organic farming, the products of which are very demanded in the European Union market and are usually sold to a price which is on average 30% higher than no organic products. So, coming back to Tanzania, the question is, what are we doing to tackle all that? The third National Five-Year Development Plan provides clear objectives for agriculture, such as enhancing the value chains thanks to food processing and encourage innovation in the agricultural sector to increase production and export. In order to adapt to the consequences of climate change, it is necessary, among other things, to increase the productivity of strategic crops, to reduce the dependency on rains for irrigation, enhance storage facilities and facilitate the transport of products to their destination. The European Union and Tanzania, together with the Member States, are working to achieve these objectives. The AgriConnect program is helping small farmers to improve the quality and quantity of their production, including here in Zanzibar. The Plant Health Project contributes to enhance food safety for export and domestic trade. The Markup 2 program will help the private sector in reporting on the sustainability performance to support export competitiveness of Tanzanian and East African small and medium enterprises for key commodities. We are also willing to help Tanzania in development of circular economy to reduce material amount by reusing the recycling materials. This is a potentially very interesting sector for the Tanzanian economy. Parts of global value chains could be established in the country, provided that there is a clear assessment done on the risk that climate change poses for the considered value chains. This requires a robust collaboration for data collection and reporting practices. Climate risk assessment for key value chains can be carried out under our trade program as Markup. Access to finance, another important issue for green investment, is also a critical challenge for the private sector. The EU, with its member states, are committed to provide climate finance in Tanzania. The upcoming EU program Finance for Growth, for instance, announced last week by Commissioner Urpilainen during her visit to Tanzania, will contribute to the development of the national framework for green bonds through support to the Capital Markets and Securities Authority. The purpose is to stimulate raising of local and cheaper funding for investment in sustainable projects. A first workshop of this program will be organized still this year, and we will be very happy to associate REPOA to that. In Tanzania, we could work together at policy level to ensure environmental considerations are included in early screening of proposed investments, repurpose the investment promotion pitch to show that green investment in Tanzania is also good for business and will represent wider market access and ensure predictability to the business environment. Transparency solutions, paperless border procedures, and digitally enabled custom systems can go a long way in reducing carbon emissions associated with the trade procedures in the East African community, supporting their transitions toward a more sustainable and resilient growth. This is part of the objective of our regional East African cooperation program called CORE that the Secretariat of the East African Communities is implementing. Tools like the East African Community Regional Trade Information Portal have been recently developed to facilitate imports of products and services that are needed to achieve climate adaptation goals, but also incentivize the development of climate-resilient goods and services for export. We will be therefore working together a lot in this sector. There are many things that remain to be done, both in trade and climate change, but there is a key issue that I think is very important for us. The fact that attracting European Union investments is important not only for the development of the economy, but also because the European business is already making big efforts to comply with the environmental and climate change standards and is acquiring an important know-how in this sector. So this know-how could be shared with the Tanzanian partners and could greatly contribute to adapting the economy of the country to what is needed on the international markets. This will be another subject for discussion in the EU-Tanzania Business Forum that we are organizing in close cooperation with the Tanzanian and Zanzibari authorities, and that will take place on 23rd and 24th of February next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you see, a lot of work in front of us, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Manfredo Fant. And right now is long-awaited time, and following up on all the remarks, it's becoming very clear that it is high time now to work together to address the climate change for competitive green growth. And right now, it's a long-awaited moment for the opening address. Therefore, I will invite Mr. Amur Hamil Bakar, the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development of Zanzibar, to welcome Honorable Mudrid Soraga, the Acting Minister, Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development of Zanzibar, to welcome His Excellency Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, the President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council. So you're welcome.
Your Excellencies, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Honorable on high table, Honorable invited guests, and workshop participants. Based on the program, I have given very easy task, whereby I requested just to call upon Honorable Soraga, Minister of President Office, Labor, Economy and Investment, but due to and it is enough to say that due to the fact that we are behind the schedule, Your Excellencies, now on your permission, allow me to call or to invite Honorable Mudrik to say a few words and formally welcoming you to address this gathering. Honorable Soraga, karibu sana.
Your Excellency, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, the President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, Chief Secretary of the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar, Honorable Ministers from the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar present at this workshop, Honorable Members of Parliament and members of the House of Representatives present, Your Excellency Ambassador Met Norgard, the Ambassador of Denmark to Tanzania, Your Excellency Manfredo Fanti, Head of the European Union Delegation, Excellency Ambassadors and Heads of Missions and International Organizations, the Honorable Regional Commissioner present, District Commissioner, Head of Special Departments, Principal Secretaries, Dr. Donald Murray, the Executive Director of REPOA, Mr. Abdul Majid Sekela, the Managing Director of CRDB Bank, Honorable Jean-Paul Adam, Director, Technology, Climate Change in Natural Resource Management Division, who's our keynote speaker, distinguished panelists, invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'm pleased to be standing here today to welcome the President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, to officiate the 26th installment of REPOA's annual research workshop. However, before I welcome the guest of honor, Your Excellency, with your permission, kindly allow me to make a few remarks with regard to this event on behalf of the Ministry of Trade. Distinguished participants, our islands are at a crossroads of rapid transformation and economic growth attributed to strong macro and microeconomic policies that have been adopted by the 8th-phase government. Our gathering is timely, and I'm confident that through this forum, it will accord us with the opportunity to learn, exchange views and ideas on how to enhance the effectiveness and relevance of this program. I believe that all of us here today are interested to see how we can effectively utilize trade as a tool to strengthen our adaptation to climate change and foster economic growth and development that is inclusive, competitive, and above all, sustainable. We are indeed seeing steadfast progress in the diversification of our economy through, among others, agricultural production and productivity that is key to the realization of our medium-term objective as outlined in the Zanzibar Development Plan 2021-2026 of exploring the potentials of the blue economy for inclusive growth and sustainable development. Distinguished participants, the theme for this workshop is adapting trade to climate change for competitive green growth in Tanzania. While this is not a new undertaking, the Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development, REPOA, and CRDB are cognizant of the past, current, and forecasted opportunities and challenges posed by climate change, and are committed to exploring ways to leverage existing foundations in trade and related productive sectors to build a more competitive, sustainable, inclusive economy capable of adapting and mitigating the effects of climate change. The Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar, through the Union Government, has a long history of investing in international trade as a founding member of the East African Community, the Southern African Development Community, the World Trade Organization, the African Union, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific ACP groups, and now the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Through our union with the Tanzania mainland, Zanzibar has served as the focal point within the ACP group in Geneva on trade facilitation negotiations prior to the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. On the continent, the Revolutionary Government of Zanzibar is implementing the EAC Customs Union and the SADC Free Trade Area and is actively participating in negotiations for the EAC Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, SADC, Tripartite Free Trade Area, as well as the African Continental Free Trade Area Pact. Further, our country recently ratified entry into the WTO and continues to participate in the United States EAC Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, also commonly referred to as the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, has concluded but not signed the EAC-EU Economic Partnership Agreement and continues to be party to the European Union Everything But Arms Agreement. We very much hope to also see expedited conclusions to a new bilateral trade deal with the UK post-Brexit, once that will be free of some of the teething concerns currently engulfing other similar agreements in the region. Distinguished participants, the 8th phase government has decided to prioritize the integrated pursuit of the blue economy to further address these challenges. For us, the concept of a blue economy allows us to leverage our existing comparative advantages as an island nation. The blue economy also allows the application of key trade industrialization principles to exploiting the ocean as a mechanism for economic growth, to strengthen much needed backward and forward linkages between various economic sectors such as tourism and the other productive job creating subsectors of fisheries, aquaculture, seaweed farming, mariculture, strategic infrastructure including multi-purpose ports, renewable energy, and other marine exploration activities. To make this potential a reality, adequate and sustained investment is required from both domestic and foreign sources, public as well as private, to help unlock existing potentials to enhance economic sector competitiveness. Indeed, we are happy to see so many development partners with us here today, as we are confident of being able to address some of these issues together. The Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development is also happy to continue its long-standing partnership with REPOA on key policy and institutional matters. REPOA has been a sound partner of the Ministry since 2017, supporting research, capacity building, and value chain development involving both the Ministry and other trade support institutions. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, and with those few remarks, it gives me great pleasure to now welcome His Excellency, the President, to address this important gathering that bears all the hallmarks of the hard work, dedication, and commitment put forth by the government to transform Zanzibar's economy and improving the livelihoods of its people. Distinguished participants, please stand up to receive His Excellency, the President of Zanzibar and Chairman of the Revolutionary Council, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa heshima na taadhima, karibu sana uongee na hadhara hii. Asante sana.
Mtazamaji na msikilizaji wa shirika la utangazaji Zanzibar, huo ni Mheshimiwa Ramadhani Soraga. Baada ya kuzungumza hayo machache, sasa Mheshimiwa Rais wa Zanzibar na mwenyekiti wa Baraza la Mapinduzi yuko tayari kwa ajili ya kuzungumza na wananchi ambao wamefika kwenye kongamano hili.
Acting Minister for Trade and Industrial Development, Honorable Zubair Ali Maulid, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Idrisa Kitwana Mustafa, Urban North Regional Commissioner, Honorable Ministers here present, Engineers Zaina Ahmed Said, Chief Secretary, Honorable Members of the House of Representatives here present, Your Excellency, Madam Met Spandet, Ambassador of Denmark to the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and Heads of missions and international organizations here present, Dr. Donald Mbari, Executive Director of REPOA, distinguished speakers, panelists, and invited participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to Zanzibar to attend the 26th REPOA's annual research workshop. I've been informed that REPOA has partnered with CRDB to organize this workshop because of their shared common objective and interest in supporting sustainable trade, private sector development, and economic growth. This is an exemplary partnership that needs to be emulated. Together, we must encourage more institutions to forge this kind of constructive partnership, to be able to do things that have great impact on the development of our communities and nation as a whole. I extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the Ministry of Trade and Industrial Development, together with REPOA and CRDB management, for holding this workshop here in Zanzibar and inviting me to be the guest of honor. I say thank you very much. I'm glad to note that each year the number of participants in the annual workshops has been increasing considerably. The workshops attract researchers, economists, policymakers, and other professionals in different fields. Hence, before I proceed further, let me take this opportunity to welcome you to Zanzibar, particularly all the guests coming from outside the United Republic of Tanzania. As you know, Zanzibar is a destination of choice for many international travelers and conference organizers. This is mainly owing to its unique location, heritage, and the welcoming nature of its people. I wish you all a wonderful stay in Zanzibar. Distinguished guests and participants, it is gratifying to know that REPOA has been working with various ministries and agencies here in Zanzibar on research, capacity building, and policy development. I commend REPOA for supporting the government of Zanzibar in its quest to accelerate the transformation of its economy by modernizing its key drivers of economic growth, including the blue economy, tourism, manufacturing, and agriculture. I believe that REPOA, CRD Bank, and other stakeholders who are present here today will continue to support the efforts of the government of Zanzibar and that of the union government in promoting economic growth. In fact, our collective efforts in conducting research are vital to the success of our resolve to promote the dissemination and application of knowledge that contributes to improving the lives of people and boost the economic growth of our nation. I'm impressed by the theme of this year's workshop that says adapting trade to climate change for competitive green growth in Tanzania. This theme is very much in line with the development agenda of our two governments. As you all know, promoting trade and investment has been high in the list of priorities of our two governments. The government of Zanzibar has been implementing various trade and investment initiatives which are geared towards transforming our economy. We are seeking potential investors to collaborate with us in developing the blue economy that includes fishery, tourism, oil and gas, and marine trade and transport. Measures are also being undertaken to attract investors in agriculture, manufacturing, ICT, energy, and provision of social services. In addition, we are working to improve the essential infrastructure for the development of investment, trade, and manufacturing. There are various incentives available in all priority sectors that I have just mentioned. With the aim of reducing the cost of doing business and streamlining growth of trade and investment, the government of Zanzibar has also directed huge efforts towards improving the provision of services at Abedi Amani Karume International Airport and Malindi Seaport. These are our main gateways of tourism and trade. We have also increased the efficiency and services which are offered by the Zanzibar Investment Promotion Authority. On the other hand, the government of the United Republic of Tanzania is implementing the third five-year development plan, whose main thrust is building a competitive industrial economy and human development. One of the priority areas of this plan is to promote investment and trade. It is obvious, therefore, that the thrust of this workshop relates very well with the strategic plans that have been formulated by our two governments. Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, as our two governments are taking vigorous measures to promote trade and investment, we also recognize the fact that the development of investment and trade has direct impact on climate change. Climate change alters and reduces agricultural yields and productive capacity of economy of any nation. We are already witnessing this reality here in Tanzania, where adverse weather is reducing agricultural output, the amount of fish catches, production of seaweed, and also there has been frequent mass deaths of livestock due to prolonged dry seasons. On the other hand, international trade affects greenhouse emission in different ways. As we know, trade generates emission through production, transportation, and distribution of traded goods and services. Trade also increases emissions through exploitation of natural resources such as minerals, oil, timber, and industrial goods that are high energy intensive in their production. Taking into account of these linkages between the development of trade and its impact on climate change, we need to act collectively to be able to shift the way we conduct trade within and between our countries. We need to reduce overall emissions by exploring policy approaches that will enable us to mitigate the impact of climate change. I believe that we can increase trade and investment at the same time reduce gas emission. This is doable and achievable as long as countries invest in newer, lower carbon technologies, as well as heed to guidance issued by national, regional, and international organizations with the aim of combating climate change. I therefore congratulate REPOA and its partner CRDB Bank for selecting the right theme at the right time. I hope that the discussion that you will be having on these issues will be fruitful, as the climate change has always been a hot topic for discussion among researchers and scientists. I will be following the outcome of the workshop closely. I hope in the end you will come up with the recommendations that will enable us to increase the volume of trade between our countries, at the same time reduce the impact of climate change to our countries. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, with these remarks, it is now my honor to declare that the 26th Annual Research Workshop of REPOA is officially opened. I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi, the President of Zanzibar and the Chairman of the Revolutionary Council. Thank you very much. Another big round of applause to our presidents for the commendable job taking place in Zanzibar for sustainable social and economic development. And right now, just a brief announcement. I would like to remind you all to scan your QR code. So we have QR code on our badges. So on your badge, this will enable you to access the annual research workshop documents, and also will give you a room to offer your feedback. Also, the codes are also placed on different places around this venue. So thank you very much. And right now, without a further ado, it's my honor to invite our keynote speaker, Jean-Paul Adam, the Director of Technology, Climate Change and Natural Resource Management Division at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So he will be, he's already online. Mr. Jean-Paul Adam, you're welcome. I hope you can hear me. I think there is a bit of a technical glitch, so let's wait a bit. Jean-Paul Adam, your mic is off, please. I think you're on mute. May you turn on your mic, please? Can you hear me? Technical glitch. I hope we'll be. Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Your Excellency, Dr. Hussein the President of Zanzibar, is a great pleasure for me to virtually Your Excellency, the Acting Minister of Trade and Development, the Executive Director of Kutoka, all of the report partners, Your Excellency, the
diplomatic missions, the honorable members of the legislative assemblies, our development partners and senior officials, dear friends and ladies and gentlemen. I would like to particularly commend RIPOA and the government of Zanzibar for the choice of this critical theme of adapting trade to climate change for competitive green growth. The theme is particularly relevant because African countries are likely to lose up to 5% of GDP on average by 2030 to climate change. But some countries are also likely to lose well in excess of 10% of GDP. Hence the urgency of using the development tools that we may have, and chief among them would be trade, to be able to try and combat the impact of climate change. You can go to the next slide, please. So the overview of my intervention will focus on the following subjects. Firstly, we'll have a look at the vulnerability to climate and the issues of access to resources in both Tanzania and East Africa. We will consider how to move African trade towards more sustainable value chains. We will address the green economy in an African context and what a green economy implies for our countries. Looking at energy investment to drive sustainable trade, digital infrastructure investment also for the purposes of empowering trade and as one of the backbones to allow trade to go ahead. Looking at nature-based investment through the blue economy, and particularly looking at the Great Blue Wall initiative. The development of carbon markets as a means of raising resources for African countries, but also developing climate resilience. And finally, addressing the financing needs of climate resilience and the green economy, and looking at some of the vehicles that we can use to stimulate trade around the green economy, looking at, for example, green bonds, but also addressing these issues in the context of rising debt. Next slide, please. So firstly, if we look at Tanzania as a whole, Tanzania's vulnerability to climate, the vulnerability scores that are on the left of the slide are from the ND Gain Index, which is a vulnerability score on related to climate issues. And we can note that as you get closer to 1, then the vulnerability is higher. Tanzania's score is very similar to that of many other African countries, and generally African countries are having ratings that are in above 0.5, recognizing the greater exposure to risks, particular external risks, and in particular climate risk. The estimated climate finance needed for adaptation is approximately $5 billion, which sounds like a lot, but also is not so much in the context of development, but the ability to raise that money still remains a huge challenge for all African countries. And priority sectors include priority sectors from the nationally determined contribution include agriculture, food security, water, energy, forestry, and health. Next slide, please. We can look at this in the context as well of the ability of the wider East African region to raise resources. And we note that the climate finance needs for adaptation in East Africa are $157.1 billion US. In the period 2000 to 2020, 20-year period, only $11 billion US have been raised in climate finance for the region, showing a huge shortfall in the resources available. And when we look at adaptation, we are looking at it in an inclusive sense and covering all of the subjects on the right-hand side. But in particular, the first three, infrastructure and transport, water and agriculture, they are multipliers of the opportunity for developing trade. And we will go into that in a little bit more detail going forward. Next slide, please. So looking at trade a little bit more in detail, and particularly assessing the transformative potential impact of the African continental free trade area. You will note from this slide that there would be a dramatic increase in trade, in particular intra-African trade, with the full implementation of the African continental free trade area. But particularly what is interesting is the composition of that trade. So what we will see between 2020 and 2045, based on existing data and analysis that has been done by ECA, we would see that agri-food production will multiply approximately 5-fold. Industry will multiply approximately 6 times. Services will multiply by 5, while energy and mining, which will still remain a very important part of the trade profile, will only multiply by 3. And the reason for this is that what we expect to see is, with the increase in industry and services, we expect to see more value addition coming into play. This is going to be positive for the creation of jobs, and it will be positive as well for the opportunity to make trade more climate resilient, because the value chains that are developed among local communities tend to build more capacity to adapt to climate change and build more climate resilience. The current profile of trade across the continent is characterized by low intra-African trade. Currently, intra-African trade stands at only 15%, but we do expect with the implementation of the CFTA that this will grow by 75%. And again, this intra-African trade model leading to less emissions, for example, associated with long distances of travel of products, will lead to more climate resilience of that trade. And again, very critically, providing sustainable livelihoods in communities that are close to resources that may be at risk. And this will be particularly important for the development of the blue economy, for example, being able to get local communities much more involved in the value chain around products associated with the blue economy, both in terms of industry, manufacturing, and of services. Moving on to the next slide, we'll be looking a little bit more in detail at the improving value addition in African trade, which is going to be critical for building climate resilience. We need to move away from the export of raw products with minimal value addition, and in particular, the challenge around the export of raw products is that the majority of the wealth multiplier effect is then taken outside of the continent and outside of African countries. What we can see is that in the slide in the graph on the left, we can see the top African food importers and exporters for 2021, and we can see that Tanzania has an interesting position to play, particularly as a food producer for the continent in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area. While we can also see on the graph on the right the share of foreign and domestic value added in terms of merchandise exports as an average between 2010 and 2018. Now, all African countries suffer from, and particularly when we compare with other more developed regions, suffer from a relatively low domestic value addition component. And this is an area that by focusing on, we can really help to address notably the creation of jobs, the ability to accelerate growth, and critically as well, improve climate resilience. So I will now look at the question of a green economy and how do we deliver it in an African context. And these next slides are referring to case studies that the Economic Commission for Africa undertook in 2021. We have currently covered four countries, with 2 to be published in the next month, 2 additional ones. The 4 countries were Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have studies for Senegal and for Cote d'Ivoire that will be published very, very shortly. And these studies looked at the relative opportunity of investing in green sectors as opposed to remaining on a business as usual scenario, which is heavily dependent on fossil fuels. And so we looked at all different sectors and the opportunity to adopt a green methodology or a sustainable methodology as opposed to retaining a business as usual. What we saw was extremely good returns on investment and extremely positive job creation numbers as well, relative from the green sectors relative to the business as usual fossil fuel intensive sectors. We saw that in Egypt, looking at electric vehicle infrastructure, for example, brought a return on investment in excess of 400%. In Kenya, investing in renewable energy, such as through biogas plants, would bring a return on investment of almost 300%. In Kenya, investing also in biogas plants would bring a return on investment of 400%. Electric vehicle infrastructure in South Africa would bring a return on almost 300%, while investing in the utility-grade solar energy production in the Democratic Republic of Congo would bring a return of almost 200%. The high returns were also, and I think very interestingly, visible in sectors which were very critical for adaptation. So even investing in nature-based sectors and also in agriculture did demonstrate a very good return on investment. Therefore, if the right structure is in place, this can allow natural capital investments to happen, which bring returns for the private sector. But in some cases, there is some project preparation that needs to be done to mitigate some of the risk. But what we did see was, for example, in agriculture in Egypt, returns of almost 500%, where they were using solar-powered reverse osmosis irrigation and essentially using solar power to desalinate water for their agricultural products. In Egypt, we saw the use of, in Kenya, we saw the use of resilient seeds, meaning swapping existing seeds with seeds that had been proven to be more resilient to climate change, to be more resilient to heat changes, brought a return on investment of almost 300%. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, we saw that the return on investment from agroforestry, and particularly using, for example, cocoa, brought a return on investment of about 180%. In South Africa, investing in mangrove restoration brought a return on investment of 170%, while in the DRC, investing in sustainable irrigation practices brought a return on investment of almost 500%. So one of the building blocks of being able to deliver sustainable trade and climate resilient trade is investing in energy. Unfortunately, the energy gap in Africa is substantial. I think we are all aware there are almost 600 million people across the continent who do not have access to reliable forms of energy. There are even greater number, 900 million people who do not have access to clean cooking solutions. And therefore, the opportunity to drive energy investment to improve terms of trade is there, in particular through renewables, particularly because the cost of renewables has dropped very significantly. And in particular, solar and wind now offer the most cost-effective form of electricity generation for the vast majority of African countries. The challenge with renewable energies are the high upfront costs that are required, and also the need to address the challenge of intermittency of solar and wind. But there is, and we should not also be too pessimistic, because there are very significant investments already happening across the continent. There are 1,045 projects currently underway in terms of independent power producer energy projects across the continent, and in a number of sectors, including in particular large numbers of solar projects. The scale, however, of investment that is required is huge. Africa needs to double its present electricity generation by 2030, within 8 years, to be able to achieve universal access to energy. This does represent an investment opportunity of $500 billion US. Now, we need to also multiply the generation capacity by 5 by 2050. But one of the biggest challenges is that less than 2% of global clean energy finance is currently flowing to Africa. So the renewable energy pathway is the most logical, it is the most cost effective. The challenge has been the availability of financing, recognizing that particularly the upfront financing is required. Now, the opportunity to invest in renewable energy must also be looked at in the context of a just energy transition. And this just energy transition is to recognize that because of the low base capacity of generation across the continent, that we will need to invest in some cases, in certain forms of fossil fuels over the medium and the long term to create base generation capacity, which then allows the cheaper renewables to be brought online and to generate the bulk of energy going forward. As part of the African Union common position on the just energy transition, the renewable energy, solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, and biomass remain the bulk of the opportunity going forward, and particularly on the basis of having reliable, predictable, affordable access to energy. One of the big issues for African countries has been the volatility of energy prices, and with the right regulatory framework, renewable energy allows for price certainty, which is essential as well for investment and the development of trade. Natural gas has a huge role to play in this transition, because while it is a fossil fuel and it is polluting and it leads to greenhouse gases, it is among fossil fuels of a wide range of economic activities. So it has a key role to play, for example, in the production of fertilizer. It will also be a critical part of the transition towards clean cooking solutions. And therefore, the likelihood of investing in natural gas and then having a stranded asset would be less than investing in other sectors. Natural gas will be a critical component, therefore, of creating the base generation which allows more renewables to come online. And as part of that, nuclear energy and green hydrogen will also be options for some countries, not necessarily for all, but will provide a base for the development of that capacity. Oil and coal, based on the cost of production, are expected to be a solution only in the medium term. The costs of oil and coal will continue to go up relative to other forms of energy. And therefore, new investments in these sectors are likely to become stranded assets. The pillars of delivering this green, this just energy transition are firstly the availability of financing, which, as I've already mentioned, is one of the key issues. The ability to pursue regional integration and particularly regional power pools, the use of appropriate policies and regulatory frameworks to attract investment and provide predictability, and the availability of technology which is adapted to the African context. So another part of the backbone of investment in sustainable and climate resilient trade is also digital infrastructure. This slide demonstrates one project which concerns Tanzania and which was presented recently at the African Climate Finance Roundtables, which were held in Addis Ababa, and showcasing projects which could be transformative on a regional basis and which also will be critical for the development of trade on a regional basis, as well as helping to reduce emissions and build climate resilience. The extension of the national ICT broadband backbone is a means of connecting Tanzania with countries of the region, in particular Mozambique, and is a way of, it's one of the critical pieces of infrastructure which will, for example, facilitate digital payments, which are one of the key factors in a successful implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and also in delivering the opportunities, for example, for startups and powering other forms of innovation using new technologies such as artificial intelligence. Moving on to other opportunities for climate resilient trade through the AFCFTA, I would like to touch upon what are called nature-based solutions for sustainable trade. And to demonstrate it, I will use the blue economy as a means of showcasing it, and in particular, the Great Blue Wall initiative. The Great Blue Wall initiative is an ocean-based response to the Great Green Wall, which is an initiative to build climate resilience by boosting the adaptive capacity of the natural environment, but linking this directly to the creation of livelihoods. There are three pillars for the Great Blue Wall initiative: the goal of achieving effective and equitable ocean conservation at scale, and this is linked to the goal of having 30% of the oceanic space under protection as a means of stopping biodiversity loss. And I would like to be clear that on this goal, the idea is not just to create marine protected areas and then shutting them off. It is really about looking at marine spatial planning in a way whereby marine protected areas contribute towards sustainable fishing sectors, empower local fishing entrepreneurs, and also create other forms of revenue generation, including through ecotourism. The second pillar is achieving the net gain of critical blue ecosystems to enhance socio-ecological resilience, in particular looking at, for example, the health of mangroves, which are a critical ecosystem regulator, but also are an opportunity to generate additional wealth, partly as part of their critical role in fishery production, but also potentially as part of carbon credit markets, and we'll go into a bit more detail on that. And the third pillar is to develop a regenerative blue economy that benefits coastal communities and delivering conservation outcomes. So a regenerative blue economy means that the resources that provide wealth can regenerate themselves based on the stewardship that is provided by local communities. And therefore, it's critical that we look at the job creation aspect of the Great Blue Wall. Just very briefly to touch on the critical value of mangroves. Mangroves are under threat in the whole of the Western Indian Ocean, and they are key part of the defenses against climate change. We can see that in Tanzania, the biggest threat to mangroves is actually through extreme weather events. And therefore, interventions, for example, through the Great Blue Wall that would allow mangrove restoration bring a virtuous circle whereby rehabilitation of mangroves improves the ability to withstand extreme weather events while also providing economic opportunity going forward. Now, there has been an estimation of blue carbon potential that is linked to the mangroves of the Western Indian Ocean region, and the estimates are very substantial, recognizing that mangroves can absorb carbon at a rate which is 2 to 3 times higher than tropical rainforests. They will therefore play a critical role as climate regulators and can also, if properly managed as part of an informed blue economy strategy, potentially generate wealth through carbon credit markets. In Tanzania, the estimated value of these mangroves is in excess of $2.1 billion, but that depends very much on how we are able to leverage that opportunity. Now, the Great Blue Wall Initiative also looks to raise finance through innovations, and one of those innovations is the opportunity to issue blue bonds, and these could be done at sub-national level, for example, at the level of the government of Zanzibar. It can be done at the national level if the United Republic of Tanzania would wish to issue a blue bond on the international market. And there is also the opportunity to develop a debt for climate adaptation swap or a debt for nature swap. So firstly, the opportunity for a blue bond is built around the principle that we can generate a lot more investment if we also involve the private sector in those aspects that generate returns. So it's not necessarily the whole part of the intervention that requires the private sector, but some parts can. And the Great Blue Wall Initiative has identified investments totaling $5 billion, so very significant intervention and investment, but with potentially great returns. And these investments will be focused in particular around investments in the value chain around the fisheries sector, empowering local fishing entrepreneurs, coastal communities, to be able to make more use and better manage their catch. This includes investing, for example, in renewable energy for local communities, providing cold chain opportunities and processing opportunities. This is extremely important because the majority of industrialized fishing in Africa is actually dominated by distant fishing nations, quite often to the detriment as well of local communities. Through a well-managed and integrated system of marine protected areas, we can enhance the protection of the resource going forward, but also without necessarily reducing the fishing effort, we can achieve a lot more value from the same catch that generate multiplier effects in terms of the opportunity going forward. So the idea of a blue bond, which as I said can be done either at the subnational, national, or even regional level, because one of the aspects of the Great Blue Wall is anticipating the opportunity to even issue a multi-country blue bond with large amounts of capital raised. And this can be invested through, for example, national development banks, and these national development banks can then provide concessional lending to entrepreneurs that would be investing in this value chain. I think this is of particular interest to Zanzibar, recognizing the great strides that are being made in the development of the blue economy, and particularly the valuation of the local resources around the ocean. And again, I would like to stress that the initiative does look at the conservation and sustainability aspects, but it does estimate that a large amount of the conservation goals can be achieved by empowering local businesses, because the overall impact of distant fishing nations is actually much higher than that from local fishing communities. And therefore, the ability to develop this capacity will be critical for a sustainable blue economy. The debt for nature swap component of the Great Blue Wall Initiative would allow countries to either cancel a portion of their debt or to refinance it on more concessional terms, with the savings from the cancellation or the refinancing to be reinvested in the value chain associated with the blue economy. And the debt for nature swaps model has been proven a couple of times. I myself, I am from Seychelles, and we did such an operation successfully in 2015. Most recently, about 3 weeks ago, Barbados was able to do a similar operation with great success and raising in excess of $200 million for investment in the blue economy. So we'll move to the next slide. Sorry. So the next slide is the role that carbon markets can play in multiplying the revenue that is generated from Africa's natural capital. We have estimated, based on work that we have done with an organization called Dalberg, we have attempted to look at what would be the opportunity using nature-based investments across the African continent to generate significant carbon credits. Now, one of the, and these would be the generation of carbon credits using what are called the voluntary markets, as opposed to regulated markets. So African countries, in some cases, have already accessed voluntary markets, but generally at a price which is $10 a ton or lower. This is not the ideal price, because if we are to benchmark the amount of carbon that needs to be sequestered based on the goals of the Paris Agreement, we would need a price of at least $120 per ton. But even if we were to implement a systematic approach to carbon credits across the continent, we would still be able to raise, even at $10 per ton, $1 billion per annum. We are very confident that with the improvement of capacity in developing carbon credit markets, and therefore also the improvement of integrity of the issuance of carbon credits, that we can gradually increase the price that is asked for the issuance of carbon credits across the continent. And if we were able to raise the price to $50 per ton, this translates into overall earning opportunity annually. It's a recurring figure, would be $15 billion per annum. Whereas if we were able to align with the Paris Agreement and achieve a price of about $120 per ton, we would be able to raise $82 billion per annum, accessing carbon credit markets. This is dependent on having a high integrity market. And one of the interventions that the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa is leading is the establishment of a regional harmonized registry for the issuance of carbon credits for countries of the Congo Basin. And we are already seeing, in terms of interest from potential investors, that this can lead to a dramatic increase in prices over time. And one of the main interests as well of carbon credit markets is that, if properly designed, can really channel resources into areas that have high impact on local communities. So, for example, if there is a project designed around the rehabilitation of mangroves, there can be an investment in the replanting of mangroves, the linkage of persons involved in that replanting, but also linking this to the development of the, let's say, the local fisheries capacity, and an investment that is aimed at reducing the overall emissions, so can calculate the emissions that are absorbed by the mangroves, but can also calculate the emissions that are saved by the development of a sustainable local fisheries processing intervention, for example, and generate investment to create that multiplier effect. Sorry, so the next slide, we are close to the end. It's just, it seems to have got stuck on this slide. Thank you. Very critically as well, investing in the right way through carbon credits can lead to very significant job creation. And one of the aspects that we have been looking at is that if you have the right project template, then it creates, then it is directly linked to the creation of livelihoods. And we have seen that with the right template, we could get in some countries up to 18 million additional livelihoods, and overall across the continent can lead to an additional 167 million additional job opportunities and livelihoods. We can go to the next slide. Now, one of the biggest factors in terms of improving climate resilient trade will be the availability of financing. And one of the stumbling blocks for African countries is the fact that private sector investment in climate resilience remains very, very low. It's only 14% of the total climate finance for Africa that has come from the private sector. And this is dramatically lower than other regions, as you can see in this comparison. So being able to be less dependent only on governments and organization-driven financing, such as the Green Climate Fund, is a key strategic investment in terms of empowering climate resilient trade. Go to the next slide. One of the main vehicles that has been used for investment in climate resilience in recent years is green bonds. And you can see that on the left part of the screen, Africa's current share of green bonds is actually only 0.4% of the global green bond issuances. And the Middle East and Africa together represent only 1%. And this is against the backdrop where green, social, and sustainability-linked bonds have multiplied dramatically between 2019 and 2021. In the pandemic period, so just between 2020 and 2021, the number of green, social, and sustainability-linked bonds doubled in 2021. So one of the critical aspects will be to increase the opportunity for investment through these kind of green bond structures. One of the aspects that the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa has been developing to support this access is a liquidity and sustainability facility. And this facility is aimed at increasing the share of sustainability-linked issuances in the African region and providing support for bonds that would be issued directly aimed at investing in climate resilience. So it might be in renewable energy, or it might be in nature-based initiatives, for example, around the blue economy. This will help support the liquidity of African sovereign Eurobonds. So for those of you who may be aware of bond issuances by African countries, in most of cases, when a bond is issued by an African country, the investor is committed to that investment for a certain period of time for the maturity of the bond. It may be 10 years, it may be 15 years. The fact that that money is locked in for that period of time often is a factor in driving up the price. If we are able to have a repurchasing market for African green bonds, then that can help to reduce.
Please, let's end up here, please. Please, let's come to an end. Is it okay?
Yeah, I have one more slide and then we're done. So if you want me to do it quickly, I can do it in about 1 minute. The final point is the ability for us to link the debt issuances, both existing debt and potential new debt, linking into key performance indicators for this issuance of green or blue bonds. And the interest of using key performance indicators is to reduce the burden, the administrative burden, of measuring for example, providing reporting on green finance indicators, and rather using indicators that are already in government budgets, or in many cases already in nationally determined contributions, and using these key performance indicators to track the finance that we hope to raise through debt and through green and blue bonds. To conclude, I would just like to underline that the ability to raise finance which is specific for investment in climate resilient sectors, it will be one of the key drivers of the successful implementation of climate resilient trade. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and we look forward to
thank you indeed. Thank you
indeed for your delightful and comprehensive keynote presentation. Now, please, it has come the turn, with only 1 minute, Professor Betha Koda, representative of Repoa Board, to give us vote of thanks. Only a single minute, please.
Mheshimiwa Daktari Hussein Ali Mwinyi, Rais wa Zanzibar na mwenyekiti wa Baraza la Mapinduzi, Mheshimiwa Spika wa Baraza la Wawakilishi, Mheshimiwa Katibu Mkuu Kiongozi, waheshimiwa wajumbe wa Baraza la Mapinduzi, Mheshimiwa mawaziri, Mheshimiwa Mkuu wa Mkoa, waheshimiwa wakuu wa wilaya waliopo nasi, waheshimiwa wakilishi wao, Mheshimiwa Katibu Mkuu, waheshimiwa wageni waalikwa, mabibi na mabwana. Kazi yangu ni ndogo sana, ni kutoa heshima na shukrani kwa mgeni rasmi. Mheshimiwa Rais, umetupa heshima kubwa sana kuwa nasi siku ya leo, pamoja na kwamba tunajua shughuli zako ni nyingi sana. Kwa sisi Repoa ni heshima kubwa, na umepandisha hadhi sana washa yetu ya mwaka huu kwa uwepo wako, na nadhani waliochagua tufanye Zanzibar hawajakosea. Uwepo wako Mheshimiwa Rais unadhihirisha kabisa kwamba ushirikiano wa Repoa na Serikali ya Mapinduzi uko wa hali ya juu sana, na uwepo wako pia umedhihirisha kwamba tuna mengi sana ambayo tunaweza tukashirikiana sisi Repoa na serikali ya Zanzibar. Mheshimiwa Rais, katika hotuba yako umegusia mambo mengi sana ambayo yanaonyesha maeneo ambayo tunaweza tukatilia kipaumbele katika kufanya research zetu na kushirikiana na wananchi wa Zanzibar, hasa katika swala zima la kupambana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, lakini katika kutafuta mbinu za kukuza uchumi wa bluu na hatimaye kuleta maendeleo ya wananchi wa Zanzibar na wananchi wa Tanzania kwa ujumla. Mheshimiwa mgeni rasmi, umetoa mwongozo pia katika hotuba yako ya mambo mengi sana ambayo tunaweza tukayatumia kama kuongoza katika majadiliano yetu ya siku mbili zijazo katika kuimarisha na kuleta tija katika washa yetu ya mwaka huu ya 26 ya masuala ya utafiti. Umeelekeza sana umuhimu uliopo kati ya utafiti na maendeleo ya nchi, na hasa katika kupambana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Maeneo mengi umeyagusia, sitapita kuyapitia moja kwa moja kila moja, lakini na kuhakikishia mgeni rasmi kwamba yatatuongoza katika majadiliano yetu, na kama ulivyo tuambia katika hotuba yako ni kwamba utafuatilia kwa karibu sana yale ambayo tutajadili. Basi tunakuhakikishia mgeni rasmi kwamba kwa mwongozo wako uliotupatia kutoka katika hotuba yako itatusaidia sana kuchangia katika kutoa maoni, mapendekezo na kujikita pia zaidi katika kujadili yale ambayo kwa wewe umeona kabisa ni muhimu sana kuyazungumzia, kwa sababu yana uhusiano mzuri sana na swala zima la maendeleo ya Zanzibar. Umeelekeza pia katika hotuba yako kwamba kuna maeneo mengi ambayo inabidi tushirikiane, wadau wa aina mbalimbali, na sisi tukiwa kama mdau mkuu katika masuala ya research katika swala zima la kufuta umaskini, tunakuhakikishia kwamba tutaendelea kushirikiana na serikali ya Zanzibar ili kuweza kuleta tija zaidi katika utafiti na kuendeleza yale ambayo tumeanza kuyashughulikia kwa upande wa Zanzibar kwenye utafiti wetu, ili hatimaye tuweze kuhakikisha kwamba tunatoa mchango mkubwa kwa upande wa utafiti ambao ni muhimu sana katika uwekezaji na katika biashara ili kukuza uchumi wa nchi yetu. Mheshimiwa mgeni rasmi, tunakuhakikishia kwamba tutakuwasilishia yale ambayo yatajitokeza ili na wewe uweze kuona jinsi gani tumefuata mwongozo uliotupatia katika hotuba yako katika kuboresha majadiliano yetu ambayo yataleta tija kubwa. Napenda kumalizia mheshimiwa mgeni rasmi kwamba umetupa hadhi kubwa sana katika washa yetu hii ya 26 na imeweka historia katika shughuli zetu kwamba mahusiano yetu na serikali yako katika hali ya juu sana. Mheshimiwa Mgeni rasmi, nashukuru sana.
Well, thank you, Professor Betha Koda. Now we are about to come to an end of our event, and the last event will be photo session. In all, we are going to take 5 photos as follow. Number 1 will feature the high table. Photo number 2 will feature honorable ministers and principal secretaries. Photo number 3 will feature ambassadors and high commissioners. Photo number 4 will feature heads of security service, regional commissioners and district commissioners. And the last photo will feature organizing committee. Please, let's use the entrance at our left hand side. I mean the place over there. Excuse me, there is an important notice. Yeah.
So thank you very much. Our guest of honor is having other responsibilities right now, so apologies that we are not going to have a photo session. And right now, let's all stand up. And please, let's celebrate our president as he's going out. Thank you very much, Your Excellence President. Thank you. Another round of applause. Thank you very much.
Batatu.
Wa ZBC ni Mheshimiwa Rais ambaye ametoa maelekezo kuhusiana na warsha hii ya 26, lakini pia tutapata kumsikia Mheshimiwa Rais kile ambacho kimezungumzwa na wataalamu kutoka nje, na atapata kuzungumza hapa kuhusiana na warsha hii ya 26 ambayo lengo ni kukuza uchumi wa Tanzania na kuinua uchumi kuinuka zaidi. Na mtazamaji wa shirika la utangazaji Zanzibar na msikilizaji, lengo la kufanya warsha hii ni kuinyanyua Tanzania kiuchumi, lakini kwa upande wa biashara, na Repoa pamoja na Wizara ya Biashara na Viwanda, lakini pia na benki ya CRDB wako kwa ajili ya utatu wa kuinyanyua Tanzania kwenye masuala mbalimbali ya kiuchumi. Na CRDB imeomba mashirikiano ili kutatua changamoto zile za mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, kama kauli mbiu ya shughuli hii inavyosema, kuhusisha biashara na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi kwa ukuaji wa shindani katika uchumi wa kijani.
Athari za tabia nchi zimeshatukumba.
Ndio maana hawa ni watafiti, wanafanya tafiti, wanaleta matokeo ya tafiti serikalini. Sisi serikali kwa kutumia tafiti hizi zinatusaidia kubadilisha sera zetu ili ziendane na ulinzi wa mazingira, ziendane na kudhibiti mabadiliko ya tabia nchi.
Labda kwa swali la mwisho, Mheshimiwa, unafikiri mabadiliko haya ya tabia nchi yameleta athari gani kwa Zanzibar, na ambayo na serikali yako inachukua hatua gani?
Athari ni kubwa na ni nyingi. Unaweza ukakuta sasa hivi kwa mfano visima vyetu vya maji, unakuta badala ya kupata maji baridi, maji mazuri, unapata maji ya joto, na maeneo ambayo mmomonyoko kwa ardhi unakula sehemu ya ardhi. Kwa hiyo kuna athari nyingi zinazotokana na tabia nchi, pamoja na hatua mbalimbali zinazochukuliwa na serikali. Bado tunahitaji matokeo ya tafiti ili kutuwezesha kupanga sera zetu vizuri.
Nashukuru sana. Mwite mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa. Baruke.
Thank you.